long overdue on RX Momentum. I'm finally here with the one and only Dr. Angela Mulrooney. I know I've been promising this for months now. And we dragged her all the way from out west to meet here in the Toronto area. We're at the beautiful Patterson showroom, as you can see in the background. And it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. I know we've talked a lot on the phone and text and that.
Absolutely.
But you're more charming and are you wearing makeup? You're even better looking in person.
Being a jerk.
He's being a jerk, which is, again, it's sell, right? So, for starters, what brings you into the Toronto area today? I know you're on a Canada-wide tour.
So tonight I'm presenting the Ultimate Social Media Workshop. It's our second installment of the Canadian tour. So last night we were in Edmonton and had an amazing crowd, and then tonight is Toronto. We had a whole bunch of registrations come in today, so it's going to be an awesome turnout.
So hopefully Toronto teaches Edmonton a thing or two and knocks it out of the park.
Yeah.
And I understand from here you're heading to Ottawa and Montreal.
And then back to Edmonton and then back to Calgary.
Fantastic. You know what, when we first talked, what I found extremely interesting about you, Dr. Mulrooney, is your personal story. Are you cool with sharing some of that stuff that we talked about? Because
Sure.
it certainly resonated with me, and I know people that are watching this that have, it's not even about going through challenges, but facing obstacles, getting back on their feet again, deciding what it is they need to prioritize in their life and how they move forward, because you have a story that maximizes all of those.
Sure. Where do you want me to start?
I was very young the day I was born. Oh, look, it's Jen Turner.
Hey, Jen. I was a dentist, and I had a practice that I bought from a 78-year-old dentist when I was 4.5 years out of school. And it was in the worst part of town that it could possibly be in Calgary. So if you know what Forest Lawn is in Calgary, you know it's not exactly ideal. And I bought it from a 78-year-old dentist. I was 28 at the time, so there was a huge generation gap. There was a huge branding gap as well. And
so I'm assuming the patients were generational to him.
they were,
Right?
absolutely.
So you're buying in as this young out-of-school dentist,
Yep.
eager, all sorts of energy and passion.
Yep.
And they're set in their ways of how this doctor's been treating them for years.
Absolutely. And it was a really interesting environment. It was like nothing I'd seen before. The carpet that used to be beige was blackened with cigarette smoke and dirt, and it all carried on.
Healthcare setting, right?
Healthcare
Healthcare setting,
used to
yeah.
drop their respiration on the floor, pick it up, and blow it off and put back in their mouth. So yeah, there was
Fantastic.
lovely stories about it. But honestly, just by sheer will, in the first year, we were able to increase the production by 73%. And then shortly after the 1-year anniversary, I
So
started.
I'm going to stop you.
Sure.
Because most people are like 73%.
Yeah.
Most people would be happy to increase their production by 5 or 10 in a calendar year. What is it that you did? What was maybe one of the two things that you did right out of the gate that allowed yourself to move that metric?
I was just I was very comfortable with just pushing it. These patients needed a lot of help. A lot of the stuff that had been placed the previous 3 years was on a bed of decay because he couldn't see properly. So I was in there willing to put in the hours to get them healthy, and so it was bread and butter dentistry that first year.
Right.
That we were able to increase the production by that much.
And then just gaining the rapport and trust of that patient base.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, because I know as soon as you say that kind of increase, people will be jumping on their seats wondering how do they participate in even a third of that.
So after that, the 1-year anniversary came and passed, and things started to change a little bit. 7 days after I was on, 7 days after the 1-year anniversary, I got 2 registered letters in the mail, and I was like, "Ooh, this is a new business development, right? I've never had this before." So I took my letters and opened them up, and it was not very good news. It was actually news that I was being sued by 2 of the employees that I had inherited with the practice for $150,000.
Okay.
Yeah. After they worked for
that stops your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had worked for me for 9 and 10 months respectively. So it was devastating because, I just figured what they told us in school, if you take care of the patients, you take care of the team, things will take care of itself, and things will be great.
Organically grows. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a huge wake-up call that I had no idea what I got myself into. And, suddenly the weight of that falls upon you, and you just go, this is a huge responsibility that I took on.
Right.
And now hard work alone is not going to save me.
Okay.
Yeah. And then shortly after that, we started to see, oh my gosh, our patients don't have insurance now, and they don't have jobs, because we realized we were now seeing the ramifications of the global financial crisis. So all that increase in production seemed like it was just going to completely disappear.
Bottoming out.
Yeah. Because we didn't have the ability to produce like that anymore. So things got really scary really fast.
Right. So what's your first thought? What's your first reaction? Because a lot of people, when they get put in that spot, go into reactive as opposed to proactive. Anyone that I've coached, when things come at them at 100 miles an hour, they go into reaction mode. I'm curious on how you handled it.
Honestly, the only thing that was really helping me keep going was knowing that on the eve of my 30th birthday, I was going to find out my fate. I was going to find out if they were accepting or rejecting or countering the offer for the settlement.
Okay.
And so
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy
yeah.
birthday.
One foot in front of the other every day, just going, okay, one more day. I just have to get through one more day and keep going.
Okay.
And I just worked my heart into my work, worked harder than I had even in the previous year. That was I always deal well with things if I have a project that I can concentrate on.
Okay.
Because then it doesn't allow me to kind of go down that rabbit
Dig
hole.
in the rabbit hole, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're fully immersed. You realize it's almost like a do or die situation.
Yep.
What's the outcome?
The outcome is on the eve of my 30th birthday. I don't get a phone call at 4 p.m. I don't get a phone call at 6 p.m. Finally, at 8 p.m., I get a hold of the lawyer, and she tells me that, they didn't bother responding. And I didn't even know that that was an option.
Okay.
So now the spiraling happened. So everything that I'd been pushing down those previous months to put one foot in front of the other all just boiled up.
Right.
And if you had looked through my kitchen window probably around 10 p.m., you would have seen me in a ball, tears streaming down my face, going like
What's
there's no light at the end of the tunnel anymore. That has been completely turned off.
Okay. And from there?
Then from there, I ended up walking down into my basement and having a plan of how I was going to get myself out of pain, and ended up stepping onto a stool and reaching for a rope that I had hung earlier that night. And
So you are at the ultimate level of desperation at this point.
yep.
All inspired thought has been canceled out.
Yeah, and it's amazing because I had, people didn't really know that I was going through this. They didn't know how bad things were because I wasn't
you
a good
suppressed
communicator.
this,
Yeah, I just shoved it down and put on professional Angela and carried forward, and yep, and then when that happened, the lid came off and all Pandora's box got
Right.
got released, so.
And now, is that a calculated thought? Because, again, anytime I've tried to process what would drive somebody to the brink of suicide, I think that whole rational thinking must be completely off the table. So does it become calculated? What's the thought? Do you remember? Do you recall the thought and feeling process?
I would say it felt pretty calculated. It was like, okay, I have tried. I made them an offer. Things are bad in the practice. There doesn't seem to be a way out of this, and I've just bored through this for the last 2 months, and I'm done. I'm empty.
And there's nothing left.
There's nothing left. There's nothing left to do. This is not going to get better.
And then something happens.
And then something happens. I ended up getting a phone call from one of my patients who had asked me to do what a lot of the patients had asked me to do, which was really provide that compromised treatment. She asked me to place another 5-surface pinned IRM instead of doing a crown. And so her call, it saved my life, really. And it interrupted that thought pattern that there was no light at the end of the tunnel, because I suddenly realized that, she needs me.
There's purpose.
Yeah.
There's purpose. I'm curious, and it doesn't matter one way or the other. Does this person know in a roundabout way? So they have no idea this person exists on this planet right now. They have no idea that they are the linchpin that could have gone either way for you.
Yep.
It's pretty impressive. It's extremely when you reflect on that. Because when I remember the first time I heard your story, I was left speechless, because how do you process that? And when you're left with that, what is it that now drives you to get you past it? To never allow yourself to get back in that space.
I kind of acknowledged that everything that had transpired, because when I first bought that practice, everything was rosy and rainbows and butterflies, and 14 months before I was standing on that stool, I could see potential in everything. And now suddenly here I am standing on this stool, ready to end my life, and I could see kind of how all the pieces stacked up along those 14 months to go from everything being full of potential to
zero.
no light at the end of the tunnel, right? And start to realize how things had gone wrong. And one of the things I kept hearing as this was kind of whooshing past me was how many patients had told me, you have really big boots to fill in having bought this practice. And with the mess that he had left the practice in, the mess that he had left the patients in, I vehemently disagreed with that.
Right.
Silently, but vehemently. And it was that turning point that I realized, a lot of these patients, they didn't really like him as a dentist, but they
Right.
liked him as a person,
Okay.
right? And I was this extremely shy person who didn't communicate well. Like I wanted to get a needle in someone's face as fast as possible and get to drilling, right? Because that's where I was comfortable. And so I realized that I needed to change, because obviously what I was doing was not working for me to end up in this situation. So I told myself I'm not a quitter. I'm going to figure this out. I bought this with a purpose to make a difference in the community, to make a difference to these patients, and I needed to fulfill that mission.
Okay.
So then I started reaching out to different gurus, figuring out how to learn to communicate and come across as more confident and potentially a little bit charismatic, so that patients would start to like me.
She's managed to master charisma and the ability to communicate.
Yeah, but it was uncomfortable, you know. And every day I sat at the chair, I had to like force myself to practice the tools that I'd been given, because again, that instinct to just put a needle in their face and get to work was always there. So I fought that for a couple of years, really. And then started studying with gurus in business and marketing and figuring out how to leverage what I was learning in the practice, because I'd primarily done pediatrics before I bought the practice. So I worked with scared little kids, and now I had a practice full of scared adults. You know? And they're not that much different, except scared adults are way meaner. So
scared adults have more resources than scared children.
Yeah, they have way better words to use towards you.
Exactly.
So it was interesting learning the skills that I needed to be able to treat them, not just communication-wise, but even like occlusion through the COIS program, and getting IV sedation, so I could treat them with sedation and not have them go through a very stressful experience to get themselves back to kind of ground zero. I realized that I had something that no one else in the city had as a bundle of skills. And so the marketing people, the more we worked, the more they were like, you're kind of the phobic dentist, right?
So this is the niche you were going to create for yourself.
Exactly. And so they started shining light on that ability, and we were on TV, radio, interviewed by the newspaper. We were doing well on Google as well, which was easier a decade ago than it is now.
Exactly.
But once we realized that the public wanted what I had to offer, then we started offering it to other dentists as well and created a referral program. So if they had a limited scope of treatment that they needed a patient to have, then we could do that. And if they wanted to completely punt the patient because they didn't want to deal with a phobic,
you were happy to take that on.
Yeah. And it was funny because I didn't even realize that I had an affinity for phobics, but my mom was a phobic, right? So when it came to dental appointments, she was a bit of a tornado going into it. So the behavior that a lot of dentists are like, oh my gosh, they're so high maintenance. To me, that was just fear.
That's life and fear, exactly, right.
So
you already knew how to manage that to some degree.
Yeah.
Having grown up in that environment.
Exactly.
Okay. And so the story has many twists and turns. You know, you went from starting out with a dream, moving it along at a pace that was really working in your favor before you hit that wall. And that wall of being on that chair can be used as a metaphor, because I think a lot of people might get there emotionally and not know what to do. So hearing this story of yours is going to empower a lot of people on how to get unstuck and get off the chair, even if it's only a metaphor, and hopefully in most cases it is. And from there, so you start to rebuild, you start to create a new brand and a new identity, and then there's another curveball.
Yeah. There's so many curveballs.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Wait, there's more.
So as everything started to get, like, honestly, I could say my life was pretty perfect. I had this amazing practice. I was doing the kind of skills I wanted. We were working 50% fewer hours than I had when I first started, and still maintaining the billings. And my team was outstanding. And so I had this beautiful, perfect life, and then I started to have pain in my dominant hand. And that carried on for about 4 months, and I'm a professional athlete as well, and you just push through the pain.
Absolutely.
That's just normal. I appreciate that. So I kept pushing through it, and then it came to a Thursday morning, a phobia dentistry day, and a patient that had been waiting to see me for quite a bit of time was to be in my chair that morning, and I was in more pain than I had ever been in, and decided to suck it up, princess, and do what I needed to do. So got in there, we flapped her, had to recontour the bone, put in temporaries,